Hey everybody, welcome back to Season 2 of Kitchen Creations here. We're going to kick it off with a little bit of a twist on tamales. So first off, I wanted to go over some of the prep work that I've done beforehand. I had some pulled pork in the crock pot overnight. With that, I just put in a little bit of a homemade kind of mustard Carolina style barbecue sauce. I've got some shredded red cabbage, and I've had our corn husk soaking in water overnight. One of the things we want to do with the corn husk is you'll find that there's smaller pieces like this. With these, we're gonna tear them into strips and tie one of the ends together. And make a bunch of little ties like this. These are going to come in handy when we're actually making our tamales. The other thing is I have a tamale steamer. What's different about this, essentially it's just a big pot, but it's got a little grate in the bottom. How this works is we pour water into the pot, we set the grate on top, and then we're going to use that to steam our tamales. The other major difference is, I haven't made it yet, but we're using our masa much like we would to make corn tortillas, except for the tortillas we want a more dough-like consistency, whereas this we want it to be a little bit more watery. We want it to have a little bit more of a paste-like consistency to it. So that is the prep work I've done so far. Let's get to actually making them. Now we're ready to make our tamales. One last thing I wanted to mention is that when I made the masa this time, instead of water, I actually used some broth. And I did that just to add a little bit more flavor. So we're going to spoon it out onto our leaf. Masa is a little bit sticky, so it's going to be a little bit of a process. Don't be afraid to get in there and use your fingers if you have to. But we're going to spread this out as close to the edges as possible. We want to make sure that when we fold it, we have some nice overlap and that it's going to cook into a tamale as opposed to having kind of a split open face, and you'll see what I mean when I start putting it together and folding it. Making tamales is definitely an art that I have not mastered yet, as you can obviously tell here. So it doesn't look pretty, but it'll do the job. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of our pork. Put a little bit of our red cabbage on top. Now we're going to fold it over. And here's what I mean. If you don't have it all the way out to the edges, you're not going to get an overlap of the dough, and it's going to fall apart a little bit on you. Then we're going to fold up the bottom, grab one of our ties, and tie it up. Now obviously when we put it in our steamer, we want to make sure to set it upright this way. That'll make sure none of the water gets in it while it's cooking, but also if you set it like this, you're obviously going to have the potential for your insides to spill out while it's cooking, so we don't want to do that. Now we're just going to drop it in and continue making them. As you go through, the corn husks aren't all the same size, so looking for the bigger ones will make a little bit larger tamales and just give you the opportunity to put a little bit more filling inside. So partway through, I decided to add a little bit more water to our masa. I was hesitant at the beginning because with stuff like this, it's easy to add too much water, and I was trying to avoid that. But as you can see now, we've got a much more workable paste, a lot easier to use and spread. So I'm going to caution against adding too much water, add it little by little. But you are going to use, as I said before, a lot more water in this mixture than you would if you were making tortillas out of it alone. So just a little tip there. And again, we're going to add our filling. Fold it over. We want our dough to meet. Wrap it a little bit. Fold the bottom up. And add our tie. Now that we've got them all set up, it's time to get them cooking. If you don't have a setup quite like this, don't let that deter you. It's easy to make one. You can set up a wire rack and some platforms and get them up out of the water. Otherwise, there are ways you can cook them in the oven. I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure how to do that, but there are other ways of cooking them. So, I've got a little bit of water in it right now. I've got it set to medium heat. But to get it going, I just got some water boiling in the kettle. We're going to add this to the middle. No matter how many you're making, when you put them in, you want to make sure to leave a spot in the middle. We're just going to do that to get them steaming a little bit. We want to keep the heat up enough that the steam continues to flow, but we do not want the water at like a hard boil. So we're going to cover them and let them steam, keeping an eye on it, adding hot water as we need to. We're anticipating a cook time of about 90 minutes. After we've let our tamales steam for about 90 minutes, we're going to pull them out. We're going to let them cool for about 5 minutes, and that's just to let the dough set up a little bit. But then we're basically ready to eat. One of the great things about tamales is they're incredibly versatile. You can stuff them with beef, pork, chicken. If you're going for a vegetarian option, rice, beans, any kind of vegetables. You can use a more traditional flavor, or you can go a little bit off the books like I did here with barbecue, teriyaki. There's just a bunch of different ways that you can make this and fit it to your taste preferences. So it's a great one to use as a template and explore a little bit on your own. But then as we're ready to eat them, all we do is pull off the husk. And this is where my lack of skill is going to show a little bit. But they're going to taste great all the same. And there we have our very sad looking tamale.